I wanted to get some time with her actually water skiing. Hi, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where sometimes I get so excited about what I'm going to show that I forget that I actually need to start showing the material. And that's what happened. Is I was like, oh, I'll show this. Ooh, we haven't seen this one. I want to show this one. And then I was like, what time is it? Oh, I should have started 5 minutes ago. Anyways, thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry if I panicked you. I'm sorry if you have keyed your life to the show going off like exactly when it's supposed to go off. Don't do that, because I can't do it. All right, let's get started watching a film about amphibians. Enjoy.
If you've ever gone swimming, you probably know that it's a lot of fun to try different ways of swimming. This boy is doing a stroke that's sometimes called the frog kick. Can you guess why? Now we can see how the frog kick probably got its name. The strong hind legs of the frog help make it a powerful swimmer. Frogs spend most of their lives in or near water, but they can also live on land. Animals that live part of their lives in water and part on land are called amphibians. This word means both kinds of life. Frogs and their close relatives, the toads, have no tails and are sometimes called the tailless amphibians. Amphibians with tails include salamanders. This is one of the many kinds of salamanders. The salamanders of a certain family are called newts. They're quite common and are often found in pools or damp places in the woods. Another amphibian that has a tail is the mud puppy. Using its gills to breathe, it spends all its life in the water. In spite of these differences, all amphibians have moist, soft skins, and all of them live in or near the water. A pond in spring is a good place to look for amphibians coming out of their winter sleep. Hear that? It's a cricket frog, another amphibian. The cricket frog gets its name from the sound it makes. Do you think it sounds like a cricket? Air fills its throat, which puffs up like a balloon. This vocal sac, as it's called, makes the sound louder. And so, although it's a very small animal, the frog's voice can be heard a long way off. In the spring, female frogs lay their eggs in the water. A dark mass of eggs can be seen just below this frog's body. These tiny eggs, which have no shells, are held together and protected by a mass of jelly-like stuff which covers them. In about 2 weeks, these eggs are ready to hatch. Here we see the tiny eggs greatly enlarged by the camera. Baby frogs that emerge from the eggs are called tadpoles. As you can see, baby tadpoles look quite different from adult frogs. They have tails like fish. And like fish, baby tadpoles breathe through gills. They have no lungs. Here we see the gills on either side of a tadpole's head. Oxygen, which the tadpole needs to live, is taken from the water by the gills. After a few days, these gills disappear. They have been replaced by gills inside the tadpole's body. Water is taken through the tadpole's mouth, passes over the gills, where it gives up oxygen, and then passes out through a little hole on the left side of the body called the spiracle. This word means a breathing hole. Here is a tadpole gulping water through its mouth, and here on the tadpole's left side is the spiracle through which the water comes out. Besides getting oxygen, the tadpole also finds food in the water. Tadpoles eat very small plants. In time, the growing tadpole develops 2 hind legs. And after a few more weeks, 2 front legs grow. At the same time, the tadpole's gills disappear and its lungs begin to form. Now the growing tadpole, looking more and more like a frog, must come to the surface often to gulp air. Its mouth is also changing, becoming wider. For a while, the tadpole stops eating. Gradually, its body uses up the material in its tail for nourishment. As the tail gradually disappears, the tadpole completes its change into an adult frog. The change is called metamorphosis. This word means a change of form. Most amphibians undergo metamorphosis. Salamanders, for instance, have gills during their early life in the water, somewhat like those we saw on the tadpoles. As adults, salamanders live on land, and most of them have lungs. All amphibians have a skin without hair or scales, which must be kept moist. Most amphibians do some breathing through their moist skin, and so usually stay where they can get to water or damp places. The frog, for example, does a little breathing through its skin, both in water and in air, but it breathes chiefly with its lungs. All amphibians have backbones and are called vertebrates. This word means bones that turn. Most amphibians in the adult stage have legs. Although water frogs have webbed hind feet that help them in swimming, toads and some land frogs have little or no webbing on their feet. Tree frogs have small suction cups on their toes. These tiny discs help them climb trees and shrubs. Amphibians feed on snails, worms, small fishes, and other tiny animals found in the water. But for most amphibians, the main food is insects. Watch the frog and grasshopper closely. Did you see it? With lightning speed, the frog flicked out its long, sticky tongue and seized the insect. Let's watch the frog again. We'll slow the action down in the camera. There it is. Even in slow motion, the whole thing happens very quickly. By closing its mouth, the frog helps push the food down into its stomach. Because of their eating habits, frogs and other amphibians, especially toads, are very helpful to man in destroying harmful insects. Amphibians are protected from their many enemies by camouflage. Is it easy to see the newt among the pebbles? Some amphibians, such as this tree frog, not only have coloring that makes them hard to see, but they can slowly change it. This tree frog is green, like the leaf it sits on. When the same frog is on brown bark, what happens? Very slowly, the color changes until it's somewhat brownish like the bark. Now it would be much harder for an enemy to see the frog unless it moved. There's another way the frog can escape enemies, by jumping. Powerful hind legs are used to make amazing leaps. The hind legs are not only used on land, but also in water. Whether in the water or on land, all amphibians produce so little body heat that they are as cold as the air or water that surrounds them. We say they're cold-blooded. As the weather gets cold in the fall and lakes and ponds begin to freeze over, some amphibians go down to the bottom of the lake or pond. Here they lie very quietly, sometimes partly buried in mud or gravel. All their life actions continue, but are slowed down. The frog almost stops breathing, and the very little oxygen it needs to stay alive is taken through the skin instead of the lungs. This winter-long kind of sleep is called hibernation. It lasts till spring. Other amphibians, such as salamanders and newts, hibernate in protected places on land. So hibernation is another characteristic that all amphibians share. We've seen that all amphibians begin their lives in water, equipped with gills. Those that undergo metamorphosis spend part or the rest of their lives on land. We learned that even on land, amphibians live in damp places near water. Some amphibians, like the mud puppy, never lose their gills and spend all their lives in the water. In spite of many differences, all amphibians have the same general structure, whether they have tails or not. All amphibians have backbones and belong to that family of animals called vertebrates. They are the only animals with backbones that go through distinct stages of development or change. The change is called metamorphosis. They are creatures well fitted to live both on land and in water, and that's why they're called amphibians.
Great. We went from one scene where a woman was in the water, or a girl was in the water, to another scene where a girl was in the water, where people were in the water. Love it. I'm eating some broccoli, so yeah. Let's figure out how do you figure in bookkeeping and accounting. Enjoy.
What do accountants and bookkeepers do all day anyway?
What I can't understand is how they keep from going crazy. All those numbers.
I know the big companies have accountants and bookkeepers, but what about the little guy with his own business?
How could I be an accountant or bookkeeper? I have trouble counting my toes and fingers.
I like to work with people. How can I do that if I'm an
Who
accountant?
wants to sit chained to a desk writing numbers in a book?
My uncle was an accountant. He's no genius.
What kind of future is there in accounting? Aren't the machines taking over?
I don't care how many machines you have, it still takes people to make the decisions.
Hey, come on, you call that a job? Fooling around with numbers in a 3x5 office?
It sounds so monotonous. Counting, checking, counting, checking. What kind of life is that?
Any job that lets you sit around counting money every day can't be all
You
bad.
can always tell the bookkeeper's a mile away. They're the guys that squint.
A bookkeeper or accountant? Are you kidding? I want a job with a future. CPAs. Oh, yeah. Aren't they the guys that control planes around an airport?
Bookkeeper. Ever see me trying to do my income
Counting?
tax?
I'd rather have a job with real responsibility.
Keeping track of all these numbers is the job of accounting and bookkeeping personnel like me. Some accountants and bookkeepers work in medium-sized offices like this, where each person is generally responsible for several record-keeping tasks. Others work in accounting departments of large corporations. Departments of this size may contain a number of employees who have specialized in one area of accounting and bookkeeping. Small businesses usually have 1 or 2 accountants or bookkeepers who handle all the record-keeping duties. Sometimes the proprietor of a small business is his own accountant and bookkeeper, or he may hire an accounting service. Accounting personnel normally maintain the day-to-day transactions in journals and ledgers, and at regular intervals they prepare summary statements showing the amount of money received and paid out by the business. A clear, logical view of the business is required.
You know, you've got to be methodical. You've got to have a logical mind.
Joanne, that is not you.
A male chauvinist. No, seriously, though. I really think that's the most important thing if you want to be a bookkeeper or an accountant. You know, I keep all the records for the employee insurance.
Do you have much contact?
Oh, yeah, sure. They call me, they come in and see me, and I've got to have those records straight. No, I just do my work.
Health insurance is very important, particularly if you have to go to the hospital.
Right, you have to like working with numbers and keeping records.
That's right, and going along with that, Joanne, I think you have to be thorough and accurate in everything you do, and also you have to have a liking to be perfect in what you do.
Yeah, you try.
You try, and you have to like it, and you have to really hang in there until you feel it is. And because people are affected by what you do, so you have to be sure of
That's right, I have a responsibility, I feel.
You know, I don't know about you, Ed, and I don't know about you, Mickey, but when I was in college, I wanted to be a pro football player.
So you saw one of those big linebackers you wanted.
Right. Absolutely, 100% right. But if you were to look, let's look at a so-called glamorous career as a pro football player. What is his longevity? Maybe 10 years?
Yeah, if he's lucky.
Right. Between a guy who's 29, 30, he's over the hill as a football player. I'll say one thing. As an accountant, as a bookkeeper, I have an opportunity for a good and successful career and a good salary and a paycheck every week.
And that makes your wife happy.
My wife loves that paycheck.
Right.
She loves it.
When you first enter business, what kind of accounting work can you expect to do? Well, probably not accounting, but record-keeping and filing. Companies use different methods of filing transactions and correspondence, and that's one of the things you'll have to learn, how your company works. Then you'll begin doing things like recording daily transactions in financial journals. You'll work with sales slips, charge sales, invoices, inventory records, requisitions, and other special forms and records. You'll be expected to verify and record them as they occur in the journals. You may also begin operating, calculating, and accounting machines. But whatever jobs you're given at first, you can be sure of one thing. How you do them makes a difference.
Bookkeeping is a really important function of all businesses. Successful businessmen base many of their decisions upon the financial information compiled by the accounting personnel. So it's really important that bookkeepers and accountants do the best job they can. For one thing, this means keeping careful track of a lot of information. And of course, the work has to be absolutely accurate. Another part of accounting work is deadlines, time schedules. Daily records have to be accurately entered that day, not the next. And weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly records must also be completed within their time limits. I like to think it takes a special kind of person to be a really good bookkeeper and accountant.
And the other thing that's very important is what I call connection. I feel connected to the business, and I'll tell you how. Because I handle the figures, and I am an important guy. And when I'm busy, the boss tiptoes by my desk because he knows that if I don't get the figures right, he's not going to be right.
But your boss also knows you're honest, and that's a big thing.
That's very
You know,
true,
I handle commodities and handle a lot of money. You got to be honest, because that's the primary qualification people have to trust you.
Right.
You know, listen, when you're dealing with huge sums of money, now, for instance, sales records for an oil company, the information that you give them must be vital and accurate. It's a matter of honesty all the way down the line.
Right. If you're not honest, the company can't afford you. It's as simple as that.
I think that concentration is also vitally important. You have to be able to concentrate. You have to be good in math, and you have to like it.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know your
well-
objection, Joanne. You're saying, okay, a person isn't born a math major.
Right.
I agree with you. Anybody can learn to deal with figures and do with it quickly.
Right.
And also, the other thing involved is always the excitement is, for me, is meeting a time schedule.
Me too.
You have to get things out on time.
problem
and
solving.
time, and I've got a time schedule. Excuse me.
Joe, make
Bye-bye.
reservations for lunch, will you?
Right.
You know, there's
See you,
another
Joe.
qualification that we completely overlooked here. That's the working of machines. You know, whether it's a calculating machine or an accounting machine, any type of machinery, you have to be awfully coordinated.
God bless the
that's true.
machine.
And you also have to like machines.
Speaking of machines.
I don't think anything is
I don't like
coordinated.
this one.
As you get more experience, you can expect to be given more advanced accounting tasks. Our more senior people are responsible for taking trial balances, handling billing procedures, and calculating employee wages and tax deductions. And if you're in a large company, you may learn to use computers to help compile and analyze complex financial information. Computers have reduced much of the repetitive drudgery that was sometimes a part of record-keeping in large business organizations. In bigger companies, there's considerable specialization and opportunity for variety in your bookkeeping work. In our company, for example, Mr. Sommerfeld handles our accounts receivable. Mr. Johnson does our accounts payable. Mr. Freer handles two jobs, accounts classification and classification control. Miss Bellino does our medical vouchers, insurance, record keeping, and computation. Mrs. Thomas, who has a background in banking, is in the commodity loan department. Of course, you may want to enter a small company where you'll have an opportunity to learn all of the bookkeeping work. Or you may choose to go on to college and major in accounting. Usually, accountants and certified public accountants, CPAs, have a college degree. Much of the opportunity you will have in bookkeeping and accounting will depend on how well you prepare yourself, no matter how you train. High school, college, business school, or on the job. Accounting is sometimes called the language of business, and the more proficient you become while training, the better your prospects for a satisfying and rewarding career. Today, there's an increasing opportunity for a wide range of interesting and important work as a bookkeeper and accountant.
You, I feel like, was made in the late 40s and features a very young Dick York, who is thinking about taking some bookkeeping classes because he wants to help on the farm, the family farm. So that's how long, what was that, like 20 years before 15 years before they made a new one. They were like, that Bookkeeping You film, that's fine. Kids in the late 60s, they're okay with that. All right, we're gonna try to use the scanner back here. It's being problematic today, and so today's film, I'm gonna try not to duplicate the last 2 days. This film is called Primate Head Injuries for Fun and Profit, and I think that we're gonna be okay with the content. No, I'm kidding. No. Although I don't know what the... So this is... Alright, let's just watch this.
Sound 1A, Dr. Stanley Milgram, Human Aggression, revised.
These teenagers belong to a gang, the Young Skulls. In this film, we will follow the gang through an ordinary day and see what part aggression plays in the lives of its members. For aggression is not something apart from life, but is deeply interwoven with it. We will examine modern psychological theory and research that tells us where aggression comes from, how it is shaped, and what purposes it serves. Aggression is not just horsing around. Aggression is not just an emotion such as anger. No, aggression is an action taken with the purpose of inflicting harm. People may act aggressively against other people, property, or symbols. Aggression often results from a specific provocation, such as a frustration, invasion of territory, or a threat. But the nature of the triggering incident is not always clear. Perhaps the gang was splashed by the car and is now retaliating. Perhaps it is a symbol of something they resent. Aggression is present in all animal species and is as much a product of evolutionary development as wings, claws, and eyes. It is present because it is indispensable for survival. Animals fight to establish a dominance hierarchy, a pecking order which determines which male has priority access to food and to females. Animals fight to protect territory. One of these fiddler crabs has invaded the territory of the other and is attacked. And animals attack other animals for food, but almost always their prey is of another species. Aggression is often expressed as a threat rather than a consummated act. Threats are often enough to decide who will back down and who will prevail. In this gang, an aggressive aura sends an intimidating message to those around it, a message that the gang is to be respected and not messed with.
Right? So you tell your Supreme, if he want his shit back, he come down here, and if my boys want, if any of y'all want to fuck this dude up, y'all got my permission, all right? Y'all got my permission. He told me he quit, and he wearing Blue Angels colors, all right? I'm telling you, man. If y'all want to fuck him up, go ahead. Hey, bro, man.
Territoriality plays its part in provoking human aggression. Here, a member of a competing gang, the Blue Angels, is challenged as he attempts to enter the turf of the Young Skulls. The Young Skulls grab the colors of the Blue Angels.
And they'll get the colors back. But your prayers might not come back. You want it? All right, man.
Through the use of symbols and language, humans engage in a process of pseudo-speciation, treating the outgroup as if it were another species, treating symbolic distinctions as if they were biological ones, then acting as predators toward them. Conflicts over territory are not limited to lower-class youths. Middle-class residents of this Brooklyn neighborhood are equally willing to fight against the incursion of outsiders. More generally, any challenge to the accepted social order may trigger an aggressive response. One rule of social life is that when standing on line, it is first come, first serve. Here, a Confederate will ignore the rule. The violation of the rule provokes aggressive gestures and threats.
I don't even know these two suckers, man. They never come
Dominance and the challenge to dominance plays a role also in human aggression. The lad sitting on the ground has challenged the hierarchy of the gang.
He's your assistant supreme now. Understand? Understand what I'm saying? You know, punishment. I never known a skull to get on punishment. You have sold your soul to the devil. But this is the devil, and we are his demons. So you in hell now, and you must worship. And you gonna burn. You know what I'm saying? He must worship us.
The leadership reasserts its power by forcing him to undergo a ritualized beating.
Oh my God! Wait!
It's not hard to find instances of aggression in the real world, but the problem for the psychologist is to find a way to study aggressive behavior in a precise, exact way in laboratory situations where he has some control and where the person who's the object of aggression, the target of aggression, does not actually get hurt. I wrestled with this problem for a long time, and in 1960, a simple solution occurred to me, and that is a subject could be allowed to administer a graded series of shocks to another person. I drew a set of sketches of a shock machine. It was later to be called an aggression machine. I moved on to use this machine for the study of obedience, but other investigators, Arnold Buss, for example, used the machine to study aggression per se. He showed us that men will administer higher levels of shock than women. Leonard Berkowitz studied the effects of frustration and the effects of arousal, of imitation of aggressive action using this machine. I think the machine was quite important for psychology because it allowed us to study aggressive behavior in the laboratory. Of course, there are many shortcomings of this kind of study. It's somewhat sterile, it's a little bit artificial, and so we also have to turn to the real world to study the dynamics of aggression. And in the real world, young males of many species engage in aggressive play. But the high arousal and competitiveness of aggressive play may easily explode into authentic aggression. Or sometimes the chance presence of an object may convert exuberance into a genuinely destructive act. Any simple object may be used as a weapon. Weapons serve as buffers. They create distance between the aggressor and his victim, and thus weaken inhibitions against aggressive action. Each member of the gang occupies a certain status, high to low, and the booze is passed around according to this hierarchy.
All the time. All I hear, man, is that the dudes go to the MC boots. MC boots. You got a pair? You got a pair of MCs on? You got comebacks. That's why you gotta go on, 'cause you're not.
But the low man is nonetheless frustrated when he fails to wet his throat with even a drop. In the late 30s, a group of Yale psychologists proposed that frustration always leads to aggression, and that all aggression is the outcome of some prior frustration. This frustration-aggression hypothesis has been criticized for being overstated, but it may yet have some validity.
Yo, man. Fuck doing myself. Man, fuck at it. Fuck at it.
A second hypothesis concerns the displacement of aggression. When the frustrated person cannot strike back against the source of frustration, aggression will be displaced onto other objects or persons. Milgram and Shotland demonstrated in a recent experiment that frustration definitely provokes aggressive action. In this experiment, subjects come to a gift distribution center in order to receive a radio they had been promised. In the control condition, a sign on the office counter politely states that the office is temporarily closed because of illness, and the subject was to kindly pick up his radio in another room of the building. A minor inconvenience, perhaps, but no real frustration, since the radio would soon be in hand. Among the office furnishings, a charity display for Project Hope, with several dollar bills visible through the lucite bank. The behavior of all subjects was observed by concealed video cameras. The second condition was identical to the first, with one exception. A severe frustration was introduced. The subject was brusquely informed that he would not receive the radio that had been promised. After severe frustration, subjects broke into the charity box 3 times more often than in the non-frustrating condition. Frustration is more likely to produce aggression when it is perceived as illegitimate frustration, as when this girl tries to usurp the man's right to the phone without any particular justification. The frustration seems more legitimate in the case of a pregnant woman and is thus responded to with greater equanimity. Illegitimate frustration. The reason the watch isn't ready is not perceived as valid, and frustration leads to a blow-up.
I'm sorry, sir. This is not ready right now.
Why not?
We had something more important to do.
What's more important than my watch?
Sir, it's not ready.
I don't care. Just give me the watch. I'll take it someplace else and get it fixed right. That's all. Just give me the watch.
That's not company policy.
I don't care what company policy is. I want the watch and I want it now!
Legitimate frustration. The frustration is just as real, but a death in the jeweler's family makes it legitimate.
No, I'm sorry. Your watch isn't ready yet. You see, the repairman had a death in his family.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, a couple of days then?
Yes, for certain, sir.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Sigmund Freud said that aggression is inevitable in human life. It is an instinct that can never be eradicated, but can only be channeled into more or less constructive lines. Yet modern psychology believes that its expression, shaping, and strength may well depend on social learning.
Yeah, she punishes me. You know, hitting me, you know, locking me up, and all that. My father doesn't live with me. When I was a little kid, that was the last time I seen him.
When I get punished, I gotta be upstairs at 9 o'clock. And when I get hit with a stick.
My mother used to beat me up like crazy. And they used to hit me every day. My father used to chase me all around the block barefooted.
The child grows into the man and perpetuates the tradition of violence. And the fights among men do not resemble the sterile aggression we see in the movies. In real fights, people grapple, scrape, and hurt each other.
The Gestapos originally came back from Germany. Back in the Nazi days, the Gestapos wanted to do the torture to the Americans. So that's what we got in our gangs too, a Gestapo. For those who do wrong...
Brutal parents may serve as models of aggression, but the models may also be found in history. Here, an especially aggressive segment of the gang models itself after the infamous Gestapo. Many social psychologists think that the mass media, and television in particular, teach children to be aggressive. In an experiment carried out by Bandura and Walters, children were shown a film of an adult who repeatedly pummeled and struck an inflatable doll. The frequency with which violence is depicted on television is very high. By the time a child has grown to adolescence, he has probably seen more than 10,000 acts of violence depicted on the TV screen. In the second part of the experiment, the children were allowed to play with the same doll shown in the film. Children who saw the film struck the doll more often and more vigorously than a control group of children who had not seen the film. Thus, aggression shown in the mass media may serve as a model for social learning.
Hey, yo, they're taking one of our boys, man. For no reason. Hey, big man, what's happening?
There is a special group of people whose job is to deal with aggression that has gotten out of hand, the police. Psychologist Morton Bard has set up a program to train the police in psychological principles of intervention.
When people are at each other in conflict situations, it is the police who are called upon to serve as a third party, to bring that dispute to some constructive outcome. My research has been concerned with interpersonal conflict management, with providing the police with the skills and the competence to bring about these resolutions. Now, I think it should be noted that the closer and more intimate a human relationship, the more likely it is that there be an aggressive interaction.
I take my bow and arrow.
I take my slingshot.
Yeah, what about the police? How do you get along with the police?
We get along the way same they get along with us, man. Terrible.
If you put the third party in the position of getting between disputing parties, so to speak, you expose that person to the most volatile of human aggressive motives. On arriving at the scene of a dispute, the very first thing that the officer must do is to identify possible sources or weapons of opportunity, to secure the premises, to separate the participants. Once having done that, he has to then ascertain the facts. He has to participate in a process of gathering information, to know how to gather the information, how to process that information, how to develop a plan about what he has gathered, and then to make a move in implementing that plan.
Throughout this film, we have shown how aggression is not simply a property of an isolated person, but is interwoven with the life of a group. An experiment by Milgram measures the degree to which group pressure induces aggressive acts. 4 people come to a laboratory to take part in a study on the effects of punishment on learning. The man with the mustache will administer electric shocks. He is the only real subject. The others are Confederates. He is the learner and will appear to receive electric shocks whenever he makes an error in his lesson. The shocks may vary from 15 to 450 volts. The experimenter explains that the shock actually used is to be the lowest shock level suggested by any of the 3 teachers on each trial.
Blue. Boy, girl, grass, hat.
Incorrect. The correct answer is blue girl.
Incorrect answer.
As I mentioned earlier, you 3 must decide the punishment to be administered.
Let's try 15 volts.
Okay, 15 volts.
15 volts.
The 2 Confederates raise the shock level 1 step on each trial. The subject can hold down the shocks to 15 volts, or he can be influenced by the others.
Let's try 165 volts.
165, okay.
I think that's too much.
The punishment administered will be the lowest level suggested by any of you 3.
I keep it down to 150.
Incorrect.
About a quarter of the subjects resist the group and hold the shock to the lowest levels on the generator. Half the subjects are somewhat influenced and hold the shock to intermediate levels.
270.
Another quarter completely capitulates to the group.
300.
300.
300.
Incorrect.
330.
330.
330.
Incorrect.
375.
375.
375.
White. Cloud, horse, rock, house.
Incorrect. The correct answer is white horse.
450.
450 volts.
450.
Society knows that aggression is too important to be left to laboratory subjects or to brawling adolescents. It creates special institutions for the organized infliction of harm on an enemy.
Our life is, in a way, it's kind of really rough because once we get busted, society always got that mark on us, and they never let go. See, they never can give us a break. They even scared to teach us law because they know we'll get around it. We want to start getting a little bit of roots in society, but they don't want to give us the break. So if they don't want to give us the break, we go out there on our own and get ourselves together.
If they mess with us, we're gonna scratch their eyes out.
Yeah.
Take my bean shooter with me.
The group not only pressures its members to act aggressively, it provides justifications that excuse such aggression. Individual excuses appear more legitimate when they are accepted and ratified by the group. As psychologists, we have studied some of the origins and conditions of human aggression. But in the end, it is not enough that we understand. We must use our knowledge to eliminate the imperfections of society and deprive aggression of its fertile soil. Former Attorney General Ramsey Clark sums it up this way.
The three things a society must work at constantly if it wishes to reduce aggression among its people are first health, the mental and physical health, the possibility of limiting aggression without major efforts there, particularly in mass urban technologically advanced society, are very, very limited. Second, the total environment in which people have to live. It must be clean and quiet and decent and peaceful. We've in so many ways through our environment glorified violence, it would seem. But finally, and so often missed, is the factor of justice. The idea that however healthy or however good the environment is, people will not be aggressive toward each other when they perceive injustice is wrong. Aristotle told us that the chief and universal cause of the revolutionary impulse is the desire for equality, and I think that will always be true both in interpersonal and in international relations. We will not be happy with our lot. We will not be resigned to poverty. We will not be resigned to disadvantage while it exists, and therefore justice must prevail if the humans are not to be violent and aggressive toward one another.
Where am I? Where am I? Oh, there I am. Okay, so quite coincidentally, this film was about shocking primates as well. Although this was a faked experiment that is fascinating. And I have a film that came out called Obedience, which talks about that whole study and talks about all the variations on it. And some people are like, well, parts of that were disproved because of, the subjects there were some aspects of who were picked and why they were picked and what, so it wasn't 100%. But there's been some real world stuff going on that kind of helps still continue to prove the obedience experiments. Sadly, humans being easily, they take the responsibility and they place it in somebody else's, and then they're just kind of coasting based on what the other person says. We see that a lot. So, anyways, it's a fascinating film with the street gangs, etc. but no monkeys being shocked this time, or rats being shocked. So is that a victory? I don't know. So the next, let's see, tomorrow I won't be here. We'll be driving up to DC because we're going to be doing a home movie digitizing weekend at the old Greenbelt Cinema in Greenbelt, Maryland. If you're in town, come on by. We'd love to see you. If you have some home movies, if you go to the Greenbelt Cinema website, there's a place to sign up, and we'll digitize some home movies. We're doing it in 30-minute blocks. So, yeah. So that's what we'll be doing, Katrina and I, on, driving up on Friday, and I'll be driving back on Monday. So I will pre-record shows and try not to have, really try not to have anything related to electricity being applied to people's skin or primates' skin or animal skin, etc. But who knows? It might happen. Anyways, buy us some coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks, as caffeine is what stimulates our brains. Patreon.com/avgeeks is another way to support us, because we have to buy more film cans, and we're paying for storage units and bankers boxes. We're buying a lot of bankers boxes because we're cleaning out the basement, which is icky, and getting rid of the films that are too far gone and giving them new lives. So your support helps. You can also go use the super chat function. You can hit the thumbs up button. You can watch other films that we have online. You can go to our TikTok site, tiktok.com/@av.geeks, and you can watch short films there. Those are all great ways to support us. But it's great to see you. Thanks for bearing with me, and we will see you again soon. Take care.